what's going on, guys? Happy Tuesday. This video is going to be a little bit different. So let me explain to you kind of where it's coming from, where it's going, etc. So this week, many of us, of course, are fans of The Rock, and The Rock's father passed away. And of course, we saw the posts everywhere, different media things covering it and stuff. And anytime you see something like that and it's relatable, which to me it was relatable, and I'll explain to you why. It makes you kind of replay things in your head and go back over things that have happened in your life. And then you start to realize that these celebrities, like The Rock, they're people. They're people that go through the same things that we do. The only thing that makes them different is they have 40 million eyes on them instead of 100 eyes or whatever. So The Rock actually put a video out, which is what inspired this video and spawned this video, and thanked everybody for the support. And he also went in depth on how his father passed away. Now that is what really caught me off guard. So celebrity-wise, The Rock is undeniably the most recognizable person in the entire world. And that means that he is the most famous person in the entire world. Now there might be somebody else out there, like some kind of opera singer that has more followers or whatever, but an opera singer can walk down a mall or in an airport, no problem. And only the people that are into opera know who the fuck that is. The Rock can't walk anywhere. He can't go to a mall. If The Rock went to the moon, there'd be like a little bacteria going with a fucking cell phone going, selfie, selfie. Like he can't even go to the moon and be left alone at this point in his career, in his life, right? So somebody that's that popular did the opposite of what all the other celebrities do. Every other celebrity you hear, and somebody passes away, they'll put up a post about, please respect our space and our time, and we're grieving right now. Like we have no further comment. They basically kind of pull back and they don't really tell what happened. They just leave it at that. The Rock sat down in his time of mourning and shock and not only thanked the people that were sending him messages and supporting him, which are all of his fans, but actually told us the story of his dad and how he passed away, and then kind of went in depth with his own feelings about his dad. And that really took me off guard. The most famous person in the entire world, the most famous celebrity in the entire world, can sit down and give back to his fans in probably one of the most trying times in his life, where he lost his dad. I was like, that to me, that's just incredible. It shows incredible character. And I said, you know what, like I can relate to that, because his father passed away very suddenly. He didn't have a chance to say goodbye. He didn't have a chance to say the things that he needed to say to his dad. That's exactly what happened with my dad. So I stepped back this past weekend and I said, what would be one cool thing to do? Like, of course, his father passing away is an awful thing. But what's a positive thing that we can do? What's like a way to take this negative and spin it into a positive? And then I saw his video and I said, that's it. That's exactly it. That's how I'm going to spin this into a positive. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do this. Doesn't mean you have to do this, but hey, if you guys want to do this, if you've lost your father, it doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman, but there's a definite father and son bond, and there's a mother and daughter bond. It's very, very specific, like The Rock talked about. And if you feel like you want to put your video out there, you make the video, hashtag my father, or my dad, my father. Let's go with my dad, hashtag my dad, right? And this one is going to be dedicated to The Rock, The Rock's dad, and my dad. So I thought, why not make a video like The Rock did about his dad, about my dad, and celebrate my father's life at the same time, knowing that The Rock inspired and motivated this video, then us sharing our stories with him and the world about our dads is kind of like a bringing together, kind of a strength in numbers thing. And I was like, I don't think I've really seen anybody taking the time to do that. Does anybody really give a shit? I mean, I do. So I'm going to do it. I really don't give a shit what anybody else does. So without further ado, my dad. So I grew up in Warren, Rhode Island, which is one of the smallest towns in the whole country. Obviously the state is a small state. And my dad moved there when he got out of the military. He actually was born and raised in San Antonio, Texas. He had two brothers and a sister, all older. And he had a couple half-brothers. I don't really understand the whole dynamic of how that was, because we weren't really in touch with them growing up and stuff. I don't even know if I actually met them growing up or anything like that. And he met my mom while he was in the military. And my mom said that he was in Rhode Island wearing a cowboy hat and a big belt buckle, which that made her go, that guy's different, So they got married, obviously, the whole thing. They moved back to Tennessee. My mom was homesick, so my dad was like, you know what, if you're homesick, we'll move back home to Rhode Island. He moved back to Rhode Island. And he spent the rest of his life in Rhode Island. Now, my dad was a very hands-on type guy. Like, he could build shit like you couldn't believe. Like, he never had many tools because we were very, I don't want to say, I hate using the word poor, but we didn't have money. So he never had the right tools. And he would make do and use the tools he had to create projects and things and fix things around the house. He was super handy, right? He was like a man's man. Like, he did all the man's man shit that you would do, you know? And he was really, really into wrestling. Pro wrestling was his thing. He loved it. Like, that was something that him, myself, and my brother were really into as kids and stuff like that. But I also remember my dad giving me lessons I didn't know that were lessons. And one of those lessons was about 11 years old. I got a paper route. My family is doing bad money-wise, and they had this idea that if I get a paper route, everything was in my name. My dad could actually drive me around, and we'd split the money, and it'd be extra money for the family, and I'd have money for myself. At 11 years old, my first job. And my father would take me out, and we'd do this paper route after school. He'd make me put all the papers inside the plastic things, open the door, put it between the door, close the door. It was a very specific way of doing things. Saturday morning, Sunday mornings at 5 o'clock, I'd be in Barrington with him in the morning, putting the papers together, delivering the Sunday papers and stuff like that. And I would try to throw the paper, and he would go up there, put it in the door. And I'd be like, why? Everybody else throws them. And he'd say, well, at the end of the year, when Christmas comes, that tip money's going to come, and people will appreciate that. They'll remember that. And he'd be like, if you do it right the first time, put it in the door, you won't have to do it again. If you throw it and it doesn't land right, you got to go up there and you got to open the door. So do it right the first time, and then you won't have to do it again. These are lessons that I didn't really understand at the time, And one lesson I'll never forget, and it's rolled over into my everyday life. And I don't even think it was a lesson. I think it was a situation that I now look back as a lesson because it is a teaching. It's a learning lesson, right? And I remember talking to my dad about taking a poop. And I would ask him, I was a kid, and I remember asking him, I said, Dad, what if it doesn't get clean? What if I wipe my butt and it doesn't get clean? And I'm a little kid. This sounds like me as a little kid, right? And he says, well, keep wiping. I said, well, what if it doesn't get clean? He said, keep wiping. I said, well, what if it still doesn't get clean? He said, you keep wiping and eventually it will be clean, right? And I, as a kid, and he laughed. And I remember as a kid, it didn't make much sense. But as an adult, it's like anything, right? If you don't get the result you want, you keep trying, you keep trying, you keep trying. So his story about keep wiping your butt was more to me a story about keep trying and not giving up to eventually get the result that you wanted, even if you're not getting the result that you want, right? And he was kind to others. He was a nice guy. He had jokes that were stupid that I now tell those jokes myself. I feel like my dad lives through me now. I tell his corny, stupid jokes. And I watched him defend people that couldn't defend themselves. That was something big that I'll always respect my dad for. There was an individual that lived across the street from us named Tony, and he was disabled. And his kids were talking to the kids next door, and they kind of got into it. And the guy next door came over and he punched Tony over the fence. He just cracked him in the face. And Tony had a hand that didn't work. So he just cracked him, and Tony's on the ground. And his kids came running over to our house, and they knocked on the door. And I remember it was like dinner time. We answered the door. It was like me, my mom, my brother, my father were like, what's going on? And they were crying. And they said, I had just hit my dad. And my dad looks across the street, and Tony's sitting on the ground. His glasses are all busted. His wife was trying to help him up. My dad did one of these where he went, kind of just pushed us aside, and he went walking down the stairs. And we're standing there on the porch, watching, and we bring, their kids inside. So they're crying and they're upset. My dad walks across the street, power walks, very intently. And he walks over to Tony, and he fucking looks at him, and he walks to the fence. And the guy says something like, what, do you want some too? And my father fucking cracked this guy and fucking dropped him right over the fence. Just dropped him with one fucking shot. Boom. Dude fucking hit the ground. He was fucking out, right? And my dad didn't even, he didn't fucking chirp at him. He didn't try to make him feel bad about fucking being on the ground. My father literally after his fucking hand came back, he turned around, he bent down, he picked up Tony off the ground, and he brought him in the house to clean him up and help him out. And that is something that I'll always remember. Again, a lesson from my dad. Those that can't defend themselves, they need help. You need to help them. That's part of why we're here, So overall, I love my dad. I miss him every day. Exactly like the Rocks, my dad passed away within 24 hours of a diagnosis of cancer. They gave him 2 weeks to live. He was dead within 24 hours. I never got back there to see him. I never got to talk to him because he was in a state where I don't know if he would have been able to understand what I was saying anyways. They had him doped up on Ativan and morphine. But the point is, like, I didn't get back there, and that was something that I have to live with every day and try to work through and stuff like that. But my dad wasn't just a good man. He was a great man. He really was. I mean, he didn't necessarily do great things as far as change the world with things he said or did, but he changed me. He changed my world with things he said or did. And the things that he taught me and told me to this day still ring true. And every day when I look in the mirror, I see my dad. Like, I see him. I physically see him because I look like him. And I just smile because dad is Superman to his son. You know, every son looks at his dad like he's super strong. He's superhuman. He's everything, right? That's your example of how to be a man, right? And I had a great example on how to be a man. I did. I mean, I strayed left and right and through all the different things. I kind of went my wrong directions that I did throughout life, but I had a great dad who set a great example, and till the day he died, people just loved him, right? There were very few people that didn't like my dad. I'd never really heard a bad word about my dad ever in my entire life. I mean, my mom would yell about him, but that was kind of their thing. They would just drive each other nuts. But I think that, you know, we're never ready for a parent to go. And we have no idea what's going to happen when they do pass away, like how we're going to feel. I definitely wasn't ready for the feelings that I had and the kind of emotions that I went through and stuff like that. And I honestly believe that The Rock is going through the same thing right now. It doesn't matter if you're 47, 48, 50. When your father passes like that, suddenly you don't have the things said that you think you need to say. Like, you think you have all this time left and you don't. You know, like, how many sunsets are you going to watch for the rest of your life? How many sunrises are you going to watch? You know, how many times are you going to actually feel rain on your tongue the rest of your life? Like, think about that. Like, right now it seems all limitless, but there's only a certain amount of times, and that's going to get used up. It's like Kleenex in a box. It's going to get used up and disappear, and that's the end of your life. So what we got to do is live with no regrets, which is very hard to do. But my dad was that example. He left his family behind. He loved my mom. He moved to Rhode Island, started a new life, spent his whole life there, still kept in touch with his family and visited them back home and stuff. But he created a new life and did everything that a father should do for their kids and their family. He worked hard. He did the best he could trying to raise us. He taught us examples. You know, he was funny. He was funny. I mean, that's the big thing. He was a funny guy. He loved pro wrestling. He was funny. And he was just an overall good guy. Like, he was a good man, period. Like, at his core, he loved animals. He was just a good man. So thank you, Rock, for sharing the story of your dad with us. This is my dad's story. And I would love if you guys posted your stories about your dads. Would love to hear the celebration of your dad's life and what you learned from them, the things that you took from them, how you're like them, stuff like that. I think it's an awesome thing to do. And with a world full of negativity right now and all kinds of like things pulling everybody apart, this is one thing that many of us have in common, that we've lost our fathers and we miss our fathers. And why not use that negative, turn it into a positive, and bring everybody together to try to just realize that we're all on the same page. We all go through the same shit. We have the same struggles, and we're all feeling the same shit. And I think that The Rock coming out, being that major celebrity and that most famous person in the world, just talking about how he's hurt, and you could see the emotion and stuff. He's leading by example. He's leading us by example, but he's leading his life by example, because he doesn't have to do this shit. The Rock could literally take off tomorrow and never ever have to make another post about anything ever again and just disappear. It's not about money. It's about trying to leave a legacy. But at this point, it's also about trying to help other people. And I get that, because I really, really want to do that stuff too. So thank you, Dad, for everything. I love you and miss you until the day that I die. And don't worry, I'm going to keep telling you jokes. Mushroom walks into a bar. Bartender says, "We don't serve your kind here." Mushroom says, "Why not? I'm a fun guy." That's one of Dad's jokes. So thank you guys for listening. I'm Biosphere, and I approve this message. And we're out.